All right. Hey, what's up, Mr. Ippolito's history students? This is Mr. Ippolito. I believe we are now live on the air, coming to you from my wife's scrapbook room, and very excited to have you here. So here is going to be our goal for today, just as we've done with previous reviews. I'm going to go through primarily the review sheet and also the questions that you ask on air. I do have my off-camera assistant, Libby Ippolito, my daughter, who is right over here. You can't see her, but you might hear her occasionally. She's going to be helping me out. And so she's going to be kind of feeding me the questions, letting me know what you're looking for, and specifically how I can help you. I'm going to start off. There she is. She's giving you an off-camera shout out there. I will tell you this. So there are two things that I'm going to be drawing from. Number one, and the biggest and most important thing, of course, is that Manifest Destiny study guide. So I'm going to be drawing for that. Actually, when I say two things, let me expand that a little bit. First thing that you should study from, of course, is always whenever a teacher gives you a study guide, that's the first thing you should focus on is the study guide. The next thing that I would encourage you to focus on is, just like always, I encourage you to focus to take a look at your notes, right? So take a look at all of the notes that you've taken. And if you're like, Mr. Ippolito, I don't know what notes I should be looking at. Well, I'll tell you. If you look at the table of contents, you go back to MrIppolito.com. I'm looking at the table of contents right now. It starts with the History and Art American Progress. That's item number 1. There are 14 items total on the table of contents. So you take a look through that table of contents. The other thing, and I believe it was Asael, I'm going to give Asael a shout out, because one of the things that he asked for was, Mr. Ippolito, what textbook readings do I read? Well, if you take a look at the table of contents, you'll notice that we've only read 3 sections. We haven't done really a whole lot of textbook reading. Most of our learning has been from outside sources. It's been from stuff we've learned in class. It's a little bit of video learning and primary sources and all that. So the 4 things I think I'm going to talk about, and I see you trying to get my attention, so I'll get to that question in just a moment. 4 things that I'm going to have you look at. Number 1, as always, the study guide. Number 2, the table of contents. Look through all of your notes, all of the notes from everything that we've learned over the past 4 weeks. The next thing is going to be the textbook readings. And of course, in this particular case, it's not that much. It's chapter 9, section 1, section 2, section 3. That's all of the reading that I assigned you. And then finally, there's one more thing it's not on the study guide, but it's the thing that we just did on Friday, right before spring break. And that was that Manifest Destiny primary sources exercise. So there were those readings. There was the poem. We'll talk about that. If you have questions about that, we'll talk about that during our time together tonight. But those are really the 4 things: study guide, table of contents and notes, textbook reading, chapter 9, 1, 2, and 3, and then finally the Manifest Destiny primary sources, which didn't make it on the study guide, but of course that is part of your notes. And if you left for spring break early, which wasn't many people, I know we had a couple of people absent, I think because they were sick, not because they were taking vacation early, but you want to make sure to take a look at that primary sources assignment. It's right on MrIppolito.com. Okay, so now I'm going to turn over to Libby, my daughter, and my web assistant here. What am I calling this? It's not a webinar. It's a YouTube live study guide, review, whatever. Libby.
Okay, so you have 2 quick questions I think you can answer before the long question.
Okay.
So from John Kin, you got, what about Quizlet? I believe it's...
Oh, yeah. Okay, so John, that's a great question. And first of all, thanks, John, for giving the music shout out. I will go check that out myself to see if it is indeed some good music to study by. So John, you're asking about Quizlet, and yes, the Quizlet is, I wouldn't say it's a source, but it's a good resource. It's a good help if you want to study using Quizlet. Quizlet, of course, it's just vocabulary based, so it's not going to be everything. So please don't base all of your studying based on Quizlet. That's just one resource for you. You can find the Quizlet. I put it on the table of contents from whenever we did Quizlet, the Wednesday before spring break, I think, Monday or Wednesday. You can also find the Quizlet. I'm pretty sure I put the Quizlet on Google Classroom. Somebody will let me know if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's in those 2 places, on MrIppolito.com and then also on Google Classroom. Okay, so Libby, what's our next question?
Okay, so your second question that I think you can answer pretty quickly is, can we come it at brunch or HR, which I believe is, can we come in at brunch?
Can we come in at brunch or homeroom is the question. So yes. So if you are asking if you can come in at brunch to study or ask questions, or homeroom, homeroom is actually going to be a bad time. I'm going to be working with my Rio TV students at that time. So homeroom would not be a good time to come in, but brunch would be a great time to come in. So if you have any last minute questions, or you just want to sit down and have a quiet place to study, then homeroom would be a great time. So it's I think it's an A3 day tomorrow. So it's an A312 day. So naturally, if you're in first period, brunch is going to be your last chance. You could also come in before school. My classroom's usually open starting at 7 a.m. So if you want a quiet place to study or you want to ask questions, 7 a.m. tomorrow, my classroom would be a good time. And then, of course, if you're in my second period class, brunch or lunch. Oh, no, not lunch tomorrow, because I'm actually going to be in Circle of Friends tomorrow. So if you want to come find me, I will be in the MPR with Circle of Friends. So you can come find me. We'll talk some history, but my classroom will not be open tomorrow at lunch. So you'll have to find another way to come find me, but I'll be in the MPR. Okay. The next thing I see from streamer BTW asks, where in California was gold discovered? John said Sacramento, and Sacramento is close. It's actually a place called Coloma. We've been there. I told you, I've shared with you several times. My family and I visited all 1,111 California historical landmarks, including the John Marshall Gold Discovery Site at Sutter's Mill in Coloma, California. So in Coloma, close to Sacramento, but not exactly Sacramento. Jetty Boy says, how are you doing? I'm doing great. Thanks, Jet. I hope you're doing great. And I'll also, I take a moment usually to give some shout outs. I see that you have your hand up over there. I want to give a shout out to Connor and Maddox. They were some of the first on the scene here. Also give a shout out to, I don't know who streamer BTW is. John, thanks for being here. Nathan, Jet, Jeremiah, Naomi, Sasha's here. Good. Thank you. And Daniel. So welcome to everybody who's here. And then what's our next question?
Okay, so a quick shout out to Sasha and Naomi, who both said that the Quizlet is on Google Classroom.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And then we'll start with the first question that might take a little while. Can you go over the Mormon Trail and Brigham Young?
Brigham Young, yes. So Naomi asked about the Mormon Trail and Brigham Young. One of the items in the notes that I would strongly encourage you to study is going to be the four. If you remember the jigsaw activity that we did, it was activity number 6 in the table of contents. It's called Gold Rush, Women, Mormons, and Missions. And so I didn't even give you a handout. It was the kind of thing where I think I told you to take out a piece of paper and just divide it into 4 sections: Gold Rush, Women, Mormon, and Missions. And you learned about the California Gold Rush, Pioneer Women, the California Missions, and then the Mormons, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the reason why, we in 7th grade history, you learned a lot about religion, the Catholic Church, the Protestant Reformation, all of that. But the reason why we learn about the Mormons, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is because they're entwined in American history and in the history of the westward expansion movement. They are, I would say, the original American religion, because it was started right here. Joseph Smith, tell you the quick story. Joseph Smith started the religion in New York according to their beliefs, the Latter-day Saints beliefs. John Smith, and again, if I have any LDS students who are watching right now and who want to correct me or fill in more of the details, please do so. Joseph Smith. John Smith was from the history of Virginia. Joseph Smith finds, I believe it's gold plates in New York, according to their belief. And those gold plates are the word of God, according to what they believe. It is the Book of Mormon. It is the testament of the time of Jesus Christ in his time in the Americas. So Mormons believe that Jesus was here in the Americas a long time ago. So after his time in the Holy Land, he returned and came here. And so that's the story of that. That is the Book of Mormon. And so he created this religion, this branch of Christianity, and started gathering followers. One of the parts of the Bible is it tells God's people to be fruitful and multiply, or go forth and multiply. And one of the ways that the Latter-day Saints interpreted this, and again, when I say Latter-day Saints, it's the Mormons. It's the same thing. Although currently the most recent president and prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints says that they want to start moving away from that term Mormon and more towards LDS. So anyway, they one of the ways that they interpret this "be fruitful and multiply" part of the Bible is to take on multiple wives. They don't do this anymore, but they did at the time in the mid-1800s. That's what caused a lot of the controversy. They had moved from New York to Illinois, to Nauvoo, Illinois, and then they were being so picked on and persecuted in Illinois that they decided to leave to move to try to find this promised land, right? So much like according to the Bible, the Old Testament of the Bible, the Hebrews went out and looked for the land of milk and honey, the promised land, and wandered in the desert for 40 years. The Mormons are going to go west, and especially after the murder of Joseph Smith, the LDS consider him to be a martyr, meaning someone who dies for their religious beliefs. Brigham Young then takes over and leads the Mormons out along what is called the Mormon Trail. So you have the Oregon Trail that goes to Oregon and the California Trail that goes to California, and the Mormon Trail that ends in the Valley of the Great Salt Lake in what at the time the Mormons called Deseret. Today we know it as Utah. It was Utah territory, and then it became the state of Utah. One of the conditions under which Utah became a state was that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church, had to disavow polygamy or plural marriage, right? So that was the great controversy, the reason why they were cast out and they were, looked upon as pariahs to begin with. And so that kind of ended that controversy. But so that's the whole story behind the Mormon Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Naomi, that was probably more than you were expecting, but that goes over it pretty thoroughly. Yes, next question.
Okay, from Daniel Gongora, I believe.
Yes, Daniel, yes.
Can you go over the westward expansion?
Yes, great question. And Daniel, I'm glad you brought that up because, as I mentioned before, one of the things that's going to happen tomorrow, right before the test, is normally my exams are not open note at all. However, one of the things that I will allow tomorrow is I will allow you to have one note, one piece of test help material, and that is the map that you created. You created it. I graded it. I've already handed it back to you, so you should have your map back. So you can bring that map into the exam as your study aid tomorrow if you'd like. I'm going to collect it beforehand. I'm going to check it to make sure that there are no notes. There's nothing else that you've written on there. If all it is the map, then you're good to go. And then once the exam begins, I'm going to hand that back to you, right? So that's kind of that's the rule. Is you can do that. So Daniel, when you say, can you go over the westward expansion map? I'm not sure what exactly you want me to go over, other than I think that you should know it. And I think that you should be aware of when different parts of the United States were added, right? Kind of that progression. But again, if you have that map in front of you, it's going to make life a lot easier for you. So just make sure that you bring that map with you tomorrow during the exam. Yes, Libby.
Okay, so from Mom, actually, she said, do I get a shout out?
Oh, yes, I will give your mother a shout out as well. Shout out to Mrs. Ippolito. Yes.
Okay, so let's see. There was a question about the 49th parallel.
49th parallel, yeah, I see. Well, and I'm going to go ahead and take this because I want to expand upon it. So Streamer BTW says, can you help me with the 49th parallel? Caitlin says the 49th parallel was a boundary line set in 1845. And that is true. If I can expand a little bit upon, and I see Naomi helping with that as well. So basically, parallels, if I didn't make this clear during class, parallels are lines of latitude, right? That's pretty much what a parallel is. If I had a globe here, I'm not in my classroom right now, but if I had a globe here, oh, I'll take this.
Oh, this?
Yeah, this is
my project.
I know. Yay! So this is my daughter's project right here. I'm going to see if I can get it into the shot. Okay, so let's pretend that this is the Earth, right? And you learned about this at some point in probably in elementary school or maybe in 7th grade history, but we're going to review it. So lines of longitude run from the north to the south pole, kind of like the wedges of an orange. Those are lines of longitude, right? So those are called lines of longitude, or those are also called meridians. The lines of latitude, they don't run from pole to pole. Instead, they are concentric circles that start around, starting small around the North Pole, and then getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they all run parallel to each other. So that's why they're called parallels. So the 90-degree parallel is the equator, right? That's 90 degrees. Yes, that's 90 degrees. 0 degrees would be the North Pole, 0 degrees north, 0 degrees south is the South Pole. So depending on how far north you are from the North Pole, or south you are from the North Pole, or how north you are from the South Pole, as you approach the equator, the number gets bigger, right? So, no, I'm totally getting that wrong. Here, I'm going to give that back to you because I'm messing myself up.
What are you saying?
Let's, as Willy Wonka would say, strike that, reverse it. 0 degrees latitude is the equator. We start at 0. I'm sorry for confusing you, but this is live, and sometimes people make mistakes when it's live video. The equator is 0 degrees latitude. Let's start with that. As you go up from the equator, 10 degrees latitude, 20 degrees north latitude, 30 degrees north latitude. Santa Clarita, right here, we're at about 37 degrees and change. That's Southern California, about 37 degrees north latitude, north of the equator. Once you get all the way up to the North Pole, that's 90 degrees. And then the same thing going south. Once you get all the way south, the South Pole is 90 degrees south latitude, that parallel. All of that to say, the 49th parallel is 49 degrees. If the center of the Earth were the center of an angle, right, the vertex of an angle, if you go up 49 degrees, that's the line that separates the United States from, at the time it was British North America, now it's Canada. The reason why the 49th parallel is important is because there was a dispute. You read about it in chapter 9, section 2, 9.1 or 9.2, or maybe even 9.3. There was a dispute between Britain and the United States over where the boundary between Britain's territory and the American territory should be drawn within the Oregon Territory. We were about to go to war in the mid-1800s, mid-1840s. We were about to go to war with Britain over the boundary line between what is ours and what is Britain's in Oregon. But President James K. Polk, who became president in 1845, he had his eyes set on other things. Specifically, he didn't care so much about Canada. He didn't want lands to the north. He wanted lands to the south. And why did he want land to the south? Why was the land to the south more important? And I'll give you a hint, because James K. Polk, I want to say from Kentucky, but I don't want to get this wrong. So, excuse me, from Tennessee. Born in North Carolina, then moved and lived in Tennessee. Why would a president from North Carolina, later from Tennessee, be more interested in acquiring land to the south? I'll give you a few seconds to answer, and maybe even someone will come onto the chat and answer this. If you answered slavery, you're 100% correct. James K. Polk, therefore, made peace with the British and just extended that line. We already had the boundary line. If you look at the map today, you look at that boundary line across Montana, across North Dakota, across all the way across the northern border. We go ahead and we finish that off right across the top of the rest of Montana, Idaho, and Washington State. That's all Oregon Territory right there. Oregon Territory. We just went ahead and just cut all the way through. All the northern Oregon Territory would become British Columbia today. If you've ever visited Vancouver, or I have friends in the Okanagan Valley in eastern British Columbia, that all used to be Oregon Territory. That used to kind of belong to us, maybe kind of belong to us, kind of belong to Britain. We settled it. We let them have everything north of the 49th parallel. We took everything south of the 49th parallel. The 5 states that were carved out of the Oregon Territory, south of the 49th parallel, if you remember: Oregon, Washington, Idaho, parts of Wyoming, parts of Montana, right? So that's the significance of the 49th parallel. It represented the peace that we arrived at with Britain, so that President James K. Polk could basically set his sights on Manifest Destiny to the south and getting into war with Mexico over what will eventually be settled as Texas and then the Mexican Cession. Okay, I talked a lot about that. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so a quick question that I just got from Connor, which is, how many questions are there?
The answer I always give to my students: how many questions? Between 1 and 1,000. I will answer more specifically. Around 40. Probably going to be around 40. Are we going in order?
Kind of, but that was a good question.
Okay, so
Wait.
I want to go back and go in order, please.
I know.
Yeah. Okay. So we talked about 49th parallel. Streamer BTW says multiple choice, and most of the questions are going to be multiple choice. Most of them. I might have one short answer section, maybe. We'll see. But most of them will be multiple choice. Yes. Okay. Next question.
So from Sean Thomas, what 3 men led the fighting against Mexico?
I see that. Yes.
Yeah, and there's an answer that says Steve Crockett, Sam Houston, and William Travis.
William Travis. Yeah, and so my daughter knows about this because we just went to Texas back during winter break. Winter break. We went to Texas. Yeah. So when we visited the Alamo, that question could be worded better. It's in a part of the study guide, and I'm going to open up the study guide so I can take a look at it because I think it's on the second page of the study guide. Where is? Oh, okay. So this is in the section that is labeled Mexican Cession. So what 3 men led the fighting against Mexico? I am specifically looking for, I'm definitely looking for General Winfield Scott. That's one of the men that I'm looking for that led the fight against Mexico. This was during the Mexican-American War. The other man that I'm looking for besides Winfield Scott is General Zachary Taylor. The third man that I'm looking for, it could be Stephen Kearny, or it could be John C. Fremont. But clearly, by the fact that I'm like, well, it could be one, it could be the other. Really, the 2 most important ones that I'm looking for are going to be those 2 most significant generals in the Mexican War. I'm actually going to change my question for future classes. Which 2 men led the fighting against Mexico? I really want for you to know the roles of General Zachary Taylor, General Winfield Scott. It's one section in the reading. I'm not that much of a military historian, but I want you to know those 2 guys. So there you go, Winfield Scott and Zachary Taylor. And then just to expand on that, if you're answering the question, like if just to know about the details of the Alamo and the fighting that took place in the war for Mexican independence. So the 3 leaders, I see you. The 3 leaders, the 3 like main characters, if you will, at the Alamo. 4 main characters, really. There's William Travis. He's the commander at the Alamo, right? He's what we read about is very similar to what we saw in the movie. William Travis is the commander. Jim Bowie is he's also a leader, but he doesn't get to lead much because he's really sick, and he ends up basically dying in bed during the Battle at the Alamo. There is Davy Crockett, who is another kind of seen as a leader at the Alamo. And then the guy who was never at the Alamo, let's make this very clear, never at the Alamo, Sam Houston, right? And he intentionally was never at the Alamo because he was not going to go there until Texas had a Declaration of Independence. And so by the time they had a Declaration of Independence, and by the time Sam Houston had a complete army, the Alamo had already been attacked. The Alamo had already been taken over, and everyone had been killed at the Alamo. And of course, that became a rallying cry for the Texans, who would then, charge at the Mexican army and defeat the Mexican army in 18 minutes at the Battle of San Jacinto. So Sam Houston was never at the Alamo.
Okay, and Sean Thomas just said the Mexican-American War, so that's...
Yes, and Caitlin, I wanted to say thank you to Caitlin, because Caitlin did point out Zachary Taylor, John C. Fremont, Winfield Scott. Yeah. I'm not sure who Satana was Jet, but I don't think that person was there. Yes. Oh, we did give your mother a shout out, Mrs. Ippolito. Thank you.
Then Sean Thomas. Thomas asks another question. Was Oregon County, I believe.
Oregon Country, was it a push or pull factor? So when it comes to push or pull factors, I want you to know the push and pull factors from all 4 of those. So Oregon country is not a push or pull factor. You need to know what the push and pull factors were that either pushed people out to Oregon country or drew them into Oregon country. So Sean, since you raised the question of what were the push and pull factors for Oregon country, I think the push and pull factors, well, let's back up and think of who was traveling to Oregon country. At first, it was those mountain men, right? So at first, it's young single men looking for economic opportunity, looking for jobs, looking for money, a way to support themselves. They're going out and they are seeking well, I think the primary thing in Oregon were those beaver furs, right? They were killing beavers so that they could skin them and take their fur and sell them and make a lot of money because they would be turned into very expensive fur coats that the wealthy people of Boston and New York and Paris and London, they were very happy to spend lots and lots of money on beaver pelt coats. I would say also eventually they're going to get into the logging industry as well, because that's going to become a big industry in Washington State, in what is now state of Oregon and Northern California. So that would be one push factor out of the East, is young men seeking economic opportunity, and then the pull would be there are jobs. There's money to be made if you're young and adventurous and willing to work hard and willing to brave really rough conditions. Then I would say another pull factor for people like Marcus and Narcissa Whitman was there were these Native Americans who were, in their eyes, they were heathens. They were not Christians. And so the pull factor for them would be the desire to go and convert Native Americans to Christianity. So that's a separate pull factor. And then finally, the pull factor for families would be that, again, we're talking about economic opportunity. If there are not jobs available in the East, but there's plentiful land in the West, and, you know, let's say that if, you know, maybe dad had a failed business venture, or maybe you have a criminal record, or whatever the case may be, if you just want a fresh start, the West, all over the West, was a chance for you to start over. But I just want to point out that the push-pull factors for Oregon country, and in some cases for the California Gold Rush, and in some cases for the Mormon Trail, if you think about it, if you think back to the Age of Exploration, which you should have studied right at the end of 7th grade last year, religious freedom, religious conversion, economic opportunity, jobs, a chance to start a new life for your family, weren't those the same reasons that people left England to come to the New World? That people left Ireland to come to the New World? People left other parts of Europe to come to the New World? A lot of those push and pull factors for people leaving the old world, Europe, and coming to the New World, the Americas, is going to end up being the same push-pull factors as to why they left the East Coast and then settled out, you know, came out west and either settled in Oregon or settled in California or settled in Utah or, you know, wherever. So just wanted to point that out as you're kind of thinking about the push-pull factors for Oregon country, the Mormon Trail, the California Gold Rush, and the California missions. Next question, Libby.
All right, it's another Sean Thomas question that
yes
pretty much answered all of the questions.
Okay.
All right. So the question is, how are Native Americans treated at the missions in California?
Okay. How were the Native Americans treated at the California missions? Like slave labor. That's a very quick answer. I think they were tricked into coming on to the property to begin with, and then once they were there, they were treated like slave labor, and they couldn't leave. So the short answer is treated badly. Okay.
So you have a question for Jeremiah So, and he's asking, can you explain number 6 on the study guide on Texas Continued?
Yes, I'm trying to find that, and then we're getting on a flat Earth discussion, and so again, I would ask that for those of you who are asking flat Earth questions or having discussions that don't have to do with history and specifically don't have to do with this exam, I would ask politely that you please keep your comments to just history-related stuff. Okay. Texas Continued. What was the number again?
Number 6.
Number 6. And of course, I see on my study guide, I'm finding another error. It says 6 and then it goes to 8. Anyway, number 6, where did the Texans get their revenge and what was their battle cry? We talked about it briefly, Jeremiah. They got their revenge at the Battle of San Jacinto. Jacinto is Jacinto. So you might look at it and see it seems to be pronounced Jacinto, but it is San Jacinto. And their battle cry, of course, was "Remember the Alamo." I think it was also "Remember Fannin." There was a Battle of Fannin, if I recall. I don't know if that was. It was actually. I'm sorry. It was Commander James Fannin at the Battle of Coleto. So the Battle of Coleto. It was the Goliad campaign. This is a lot of extra detail, but the reason why we remember Fannin is because he was part of the story. That was it was the surrender at Goliad. I don't think this was in the book, but the reason I mention it is because if you go and you take a look at the primary sources, those 4 primary sources that we looked at on Friday, I believe that in the political cartoon, the one with Sam Houston and with General Santa Anna and the one with General Cos, one of them says something about like "Me no Alamo, me no Fannin," or "Remember the Alamo, remember Fannin," something like that. So that's a reference to. It's basically a reference to another time that the Texians believed that they were being mistreated by the Mexican army. So that's the only reason why I mentioned Fannin. So if you're going to remember Goliad, remember the Alamo, remember Fannin, it's basically the Texans who are saying, hey, remember when the Mexican army mistreated us, and now we want to get our revenge. So that's really what that, pardon me, is all about. Libby, what's the next question?
So, will we have to know from Caitlin? Will we have to know the roles of everyone involved with the Alamo?
Caitlin, will you need to know the roles of everybody involved in the Alamo? Just the people we talked about, just the main people that we talked about. Can you explain? Oh. Okay, I'm caught up now with where. Yes, and Nathan, thank you. You did spell San Jacinto correctly, and you did say "Remember the Alamo." So thank you very much.
Okay. So from Abigail, why were Northerners opposed to the war? And it's under the Mexican cession.
Oh, yes. Okay. So, Abby, that's a great question. And thank you for asking that. And welcome to the chat, Abby. So why were Northerners opposed to the war? If you think about it, there's actually a really good reason. So think who supported the war. And Abby, I think you may have been, maybe were you there for the primary sources or not? That's why it's really good to take a look at those primary sources. Because the primary sources that we studied on Friday, if you weren't here on Friday, you should definitely take a look at those, because in one of them, the poem, I think it's James Russell Lowell poem, and the poem says the Mexican War is about slavery. So basically, it's this poet, this northern poet from Massachusetts, James Russell Lowell, saying the reason why we're fighting this war right now, it's not because of American honor. It's not because we have been wronged. It's not because we got invaded. It is simply because the Southerners, the slave-holding South, they are looking for an excuse to grab more land. Remember, we talked about President James K. Polk, born in North Carolina, later moved to Tennessee, born in a slave-holding state, later moved to a slave-holding state. If he has power as president and you have a strong Southern representation in Congress, they're going to be more likely to want to go to war to try to strengthen slavery in the United States. So again, they make peace with Britain, because it's not helpful to try to fight a war on 2 different fronts if you can avoid it. So let's make peace and settle and compromise with Britain at the 49th parallel, and let's instead direct our resources to a potential war with Mexico. You'll notice the first thing that President James K. Polk does is he makes peace with Britain in the north. This is in 1845, right after he took over as president. And then what does he do right after that in 1845? 1845, he annexes Texas. So he's poking at Mexico. He's testing them. Is Mexico going to go to war with us? Are they going to challenge us? If you recall, remember that term, under duress. Texas gained its independence, according to General Santa Anna, President Santa Anna of Mexico. He signed the treaty under duress. So Mexico really never fully claimed or recognized Texas's claim, rather, to their independence. But if Texas gets annexed by the United States then puts its big, strong arms around Texas and says, all right, Mexico, if you want Texas, now you're going to have to go through us. So at that point, Mexico was a little bit more willing to recognize that, okay, in fact, Texas had broken away. But then there was the dispute over the river, because so which river is actually going to be the southern border of Texas? And you remember Mexico was claiming the Nueces River as the southern border, because that would give Mexico more land. And then Texas and the United States was claiming that the Rio Grande was the southern border. And so there's this dispute. And so it's real easy. If you put troops in a certain place and you get challenged, and again, there's still that question of, was American blood actually spilled on American soil? Where were the first shots fired in the Mexican-American War? Were they fired north of the Nueces River, in between the Nueces River and the Rio Grande, or south of the Rio Grande? Historians today believe that they were actually fired south of the Rio Grande on what is today Mexican soil. If that's true, then we were the aggressors, right? We were the ones who started the war. It wasn't Mexico. If those first shots were fired somewhere between the Nueces River and the Rio Grande River, then that was disputed territory, right? That was not settled as to whether that was owned by Mexico or the United States. And of course, if the first shots were fired north of the Nueces River, well, then Mexico was clearly the aggressor. But that was the challenge that young Congressman Abraham Lincoln was trying to make, that we were the ones who were the aggressors. We were the ones starting this, and it was an unjust war. But of course, there were enough people who were, again, caught up in that war fever, that manifest destiny fever, that it was, the Abraham Lincoln and voices like his, northern voices, were in the minority. And the majority of the United States, the majority of Congress voted to go to war with Mexico, and therefore we went to war. That was a long explanation, but hopefully you have a better understanding of that now. Libby, what's the next question?
Okay, so there was a bit of a comment by Jetty Boy. He was making fun of belief in Ethan. And I know you're trying to share the positive message of being nice to people.
Okay, let's go ahead. Thank you. Let's focus on the questions here, the history questions. Jeremiah asks, will we need to know all of the states that were given to America from the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo? Well, Jeremiah, I'll tell you this. If you have your map with you, you will know exactly which states were taken by the United States, or which states were carved out of that land, because all of that land is land from the Mexican cession, right? So just take a look at that map, your Manifest Destiny map, or I think it was called the Westward Expansion map, whatever I called that map, Westward Expansion map. It's number 2. And if you can't find yours, then I would print one out and at least do some basic labeling, right? Print one out and have, I think it's better to go in the blank one than no map at all, right? Better to have a little something than nothing. But so print that out tonight at home if you need another copy. Okay. Sean Thomas asks, is number 1 in the Mexican session Father Junipero Serra? And the Mexican session, yes, that is Father Serra. I believe Father Serra built a total of 6 or 7 missions. Libby, you might know this. You studied 4th grade history a little bit earlier than I did. But I think Father Serra established, I asked you, Father Serra was directly involved in the building of 6 or 7 missions.
Well,
there were 21 total, but Father Serra didn't build all of them, and some of them were built after he died. Anyway,
7 or 8.
Yeah, 7 or 8 missions. But his first one was Mission San Diego de Alcalá, right? The San Diego mission. That was his very first one.
And that was what I did for him.
I know. Libby did that for her mission report. Okay. Moving down. Okay, Jet is telling us about his dinner. Nathan is asking about dinner. Okay, again, let's keep it relevant. Streamer BTW asks, what are the push and pull factors of the Mormon Trail? Is that the next question you were going to ask me?
Yes.
Push and pull factors of the Mormon Trail, which I think we've already talked about, but I'll just go over briefly. Push is the reasons why they left. Why did the Mormons leave? Why did they get out of Nauvoo, Illinois? My daughter is not even in 8th grade history, and she can answer this question. Why'd they leave?
What?
Oh, okay. They left because they were being persecuted. They were being persecuted because of their religious beliefs. That's why they left. It's the same reason why the Pilgrims left England to come to, they would later land at Plymouth Rock in Massachusetts. They were originally, I think, meant to go to Virginia, but they went off course and they ended up in what is today Massachusetts. Religious freedom. That was their push factor. Their pull factor to Deseret, which later will become Utah, the pull factor is it's a place where they were left alone, where they could practice their religion in peace without being persecuted. Still today, the majority religion of Utah, if I were to do a quick Google search, what percentage of Utah is Mormon? 62.64% of Utah is LDS, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So the pull factor to Utah was they could be left alone. So that's the push and pull factors for the Mormon Trail. Okay.
That was actually your last question.
That was my last question?
Yes.
All right.
Oh, John Kim said bye, Mr.
Oh, okay. Goodbye to John Kim. Was it Joseph Smith that led the Mormons to Utah, or was it Brigham Young? Sean Thomas is correct. It is Brigham Young because Joseph Smith was already murdered at that point. So you can't have a dead man lead you, at least not in the physical sense. Yes, Smith was shot. Yes. And so it was Brigham Young that ends up leading them into the Valley of the Great Salt Lake. That's why they named the university after him, Brigham Young University, otherwise known as BYU in Provo, Utah today. Okay, well, it's 7:40, and if I see no other questions, then I'm about ready to wrap this up. Were there any questions that that I missed? John Kim, maybe you should get a charger if your computer is at 2%. Anything else I can help you with? Because if not, then Nathan Conrad says, why did they choose the Alamo for a location instead of another? I think the reason why, and again, I'm not an expert, although I've been there, and I am a history teacher, so I should have a pretty good grasp of this. I believe they chose the Alamo because it was a defensible, it was a good defensible position. Again, I'm not a military historian, but if you know that you're going to be engaged by the enemy is coming looking for you. I see your hand up. I'm going to get to you in just a moment. If the enemy is coming for you, and especially if your army is smaller than their army, then you need to find a defensible position for you to kind of hold out until reinforcements can arrive. The Alamo, which at one time had been a mission, at one time had been a military outpost, I think, for the Spanish. The Alamo had been around for a really long time, I think over 100 years, by the time that the Texians got there. It was a walled place. There was open visibility all around at the time, and so it was an easily defensible position. And so that's why they chose that space, so that they could sort of protect themselves within this kind of walled area until reinforcements could arrive. The problem was, how many reinforcements did they get? You remember watching the movie? They got like 20 guys, 30 guys. Yeah, it wasn't, that part of the movie was pretty accurate. There are other parts that kind of Hollywood, dramatized, but they really didn't get that much in the way of reinforcements. They were expecting thousands, and they got less than 100. And so it was like 300 guys that were defending against an army of between 3,000 and 4,000 Mexican soldiers. So there was no match.
And didn't they think it was going to be a bunch of guys with blood?
Yes, and William Travis had believed, at least at first, that Sam Houston was going to be coming with a lot of reinforcements, and they never arrived. Okay,
so you have a question from Stringer BTW.
Yes.
Also known as Maddox.
Oh, okay.
Were they pulled to the missions for religion?
Were they pulled to the missions for religion? I'm assuming, Maddox, if you're talking about the push-pull factors for the missionaries, the Spanish missionaries that founded the California missions, they were pulled because they were told by God to go and convert other people. So, yes, they were pulled just in the same way that Marcus and Narcissa Whitman were pulled. You see, I hope that you see that history repeats itself, right? There are people who, from time to time, will travel from one place and go to another place because they believe it is their role to take their religion from here and go and spread it over here. Whether that's right or wrong, it's not for me to judge, but they believe that that they are called by God or some other higher calling to go and spread their faith to other people around the world. That's what the Spanish missionaries were called to do when they went to California. So I would imagine that that's a push or a pull. A push is let's leave home so we can go and convert these Native Americans. California was also beautiful, and there was also plenty of land. And so I would imagine another pull factor is the pull. It's the same pull factor as the reason why people are pulled to California today, and why California real estate is some of the most expensive in the United States. It's because it's beautiful here. We have a great climate. We have, for the most part, relatively mild summers and relatively mild winters. And of course, it's hot in the summer, but visit Texas in the summer, or New England in the summer, or New York City in the summer, and
it's not fun.
You'll be ready to come back to Southern California.
Okay, so Sean Thomas asked, why were people interested in moving to Oregon?
Okay, Sean asked, why were people interested in moving to Oregon? I think farmland. Well, when we talked about Sean, we talked about this previously. There were 3 different types of people coming to Oregon. You had your mountain men who were, like I said, they were young single guys just looking to make a buck. And then you had like the Marcus and Narcissa Whitmans who were looking to convert Native Americans to Christianity. And then you had the families. Remember, like the Appleton family, we did the play reading, the dramatic play reading in class with the Appleton family and tall grass waving, and so that was a family that was headed out to Oregon to seek out a better life. So that rather than being stuck in whatever job or maybe limited job opportunities on the East Coast, they head west and they can live off the land and they can farm, and it's a chance to start over. And I think, like other people who move, we still have people today in the United States who move west, who either move to California or move to Texas or move to Idaho. We have several friends that have moved from California to Idaho because the land is cheap and the cost of living is lower. They moved to Texas because the cost of living is lower. You ever watch Fixer Upper on HGTV, and you watch, you see how a brand new home is, costs $70,000, $80,000 before they fix it up. And here, the same size house in Santa Clarita would be $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000. So still today, those pull factors are some of the same pull factors. It's different places now, but a pull factor to Idaho today is the same pull factor that might have pulled people into Texas or California, 100, 150 years ago. It's cheap land. It's an opportunity to, start a new life for yourself and for your family. Yes, question.
Okay, so Sasha asked, can we go over the study guide?
Okay, first, I see a question if we can go in order.
This is in order.
Not the Kayla question. Oh, Sasha, can go over the study guide. So Sasha, that's what we have been doing. The whole night we've been going over the study guide. Sasha, if you have a specific question that you'd like to talk about in the study guide, please share it. But we've been going over the study guide for the last 46 minutes. So, and now we're at Kayla's question, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
Who were the 49ers?
Oh, who were the 49ers? The 49ers were a football team from San Francisco, led by number 16, Joe Montana. No, I'm just kidding. The 49ers football team was named after the 49ers, who were the miners who came, well, not just miners, but everybody who came west to California during the time of the gold rush, starting in 1849, to seek their fortune. Either most of them to seek their fortune by panning for gold or mining for gold or digging for gold or however they thought they were going to get gold. But some of them, the smartest ones, were not the ones who were going after the gold. They were the ones who saw an opportunity to sell to people who were going after the gold. So it's kind of like when you go to a concert or you go to a sporting event, and you have those people who are outside selling the bacon-wrapped hot dogs or selling the T-shirts or selling the whatever. You've seen those people. They're out there. They know that there's money to be had from people who are drawn to a particular location. So the really smart people who really did get rich were not necessarily the gold people who found gold, but rather people who sold axes and shovels and blue jeans and alcohol and all the other things that these miners that were coming out to California, all the goods and services that they needed in order to survive and, you know, try to eke out an existence out in California.
Also, even chocolate. Ghirardelli was, I believe, was also
Ghirardelli, yes. Ghirardelli also started in San Francisco in the mid-1800s. The same can be said for the Bodine family that started their sourdough bread empire as well. Kayla asked, what was the purpose of the Alamo? Was there any other purpose of the Alamo other than it being used for gatherings of Anglo-Americans and Tejanos? The main purpose of the Alamo, as we learned it, Kayla, number one, it was used by the Texas Army that was being pursued by, that was soon to be engaging with Santa Anna's much larger army. They needed a place to congregate so that they wouldn't be wiped out completely, which of course they eventually were anyway. They were hoping for the reinforcements. They never got it. The Alamo originally served the purpose of protecting them. How many days were they in the Alamo before they, was it 13 days? 13 days before the attack happened. Anyway, the siege, they were under siege for, I think it was 13 days, something like that. So that was the original purpose of the Alamo, was to protect that army and the people living in Bejar, or San Antonio de Bejar, that were living in the town, San Antonio. It was originally designed to protect them as well. And remember, they released, because there was a battle that was going to happen. And so they let all the civilians go, all the women and children and the older men, the people living in the town, the village, people of the village, they let them go in peace. That was the original purpose of the Alamo, was as a defensive post. Once all of the Texians had been slaughtered at the Alamo, it served a new purpose. It became a rallying cry. It became a source of inspiration, a source of rage for the Texans. When I say Texans and Texians, I'm using that term interchangeably. It became a source of anger, a source of we got to do it for those guys. Those guys sacrificed their lives for this dream that we call Texas. And what did they, and if we lose this war, then their deaths would have been in vain. So we have to win. We have to come up with a Declaration of Independence. We have to fight for this dream that we call Texas. And so the Alamo served a new purpose, which was to become this rallying cry, this point of inspiration for the Texans to finish and win their war for independence.
And then we have a question from Naomi.
Naomi asks, what about the treaty for the Mexican-American War? That treaty, it's just a simple answer. It is the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Guadalupe Hidalgo. I think that was in Chapter 9, Section 3. Streamer BTW, do we establish that's Maddox?
Yes.
Yes, Maddox asks, what are the Whitman's first name? I'm not going to test you on it, but it's Marcus is the man and Narcissa is the woman.
That's what Nathan said.
Yes, Marcus and Narcissa. Nathan, you're correct. Okay. Anything else? Because if not, then we're going to shut this study session down. I'm going to go ahead and repeat, for those of you just joining us who jumped in late, I will repeat the same thing that I mentioned at the top of the YouTube live study session. There are 4 things that I'm encouraging you to look over. Number 1, I'm encouraging you to look over the study guide. Obviously, we've been talking about the study guide all night. Number 2, I'm going to encourage you to look at the table of contents, right? Because those are all of your notes. So take a look at the table of contents. Number 3, I'm going to encourage you to look at the textbook, Chapter 9, Section 1, Chapter 9, Section 2, Chapter 9, Section 3. And then finally, don't forget this, especially those of you who are absent on Friday. If you missed this, you're still going to be responsible for it. The Manifest Destiny primary sources. The reading is located, that's number 14 on the table of contents. And so that's there too. So those are the 4 things that I'm going to encourage you to look over while you're finishing your study tonight. Can you give shout outs? Sasha, I will give you a shout out. I gave some shout outs earlier. And I've been giving shout outs throughout the thing. So, so there we go. If you have any final questions, really the best time to come and see me would be at brunch tomorrow. Otherwise, I think that is it. And yes, I am giving shout outs to the people watching. And oh, do we think Virginia is going to win? Has that game already started? It's Virginia versus Texas Tech, right? Yes. Nathan, you're welcome. And it's in the second half, 10 minutes to go. Virginia's up by 10. Yeah, I do think that Virginia's going to win. But really the big winners are you, because you joined us for the study guide, and if you the review session. And of course, if you could not join us live for the study session, hopefully you're checking this out, the recording afterwards. So you are welcome. Thank you, Maddox. Thank you, Connor, Sasha, Nathan, Naomi, Kayla, Connor, Sean. We have both Seans or just one Sean?
We had one Sean watching with them.
There we go. Naomi, Jeremiah, John, Sasha, if I didn't already mention you. Yes, Jet. Thank you. I think I gave a shout out to everybody. All right. Hey, folks, thanks so much for joining us. And this is Mr. Ippolito signing off. Have a wonderful evening.
Wait.
Oh, was there one more question?
By Delilah? I feel like you said
Delia, this isn't exactly related to the exam, but is the project due tomorrow? Oh, Delia, the answer is no, the project is not due tomorrow. The project, there are two things that I'm collecting on Thursday. That's a good question. Before you leave, Delia, great question. Two things that I need to get by Thursday. The Be the Thing write-up and your artifact. So those are the two things. We'll do that. You can worry about the slideshow later. Be the Thing and the artifact, those are due by Thursday, because Thursday is the day of open house. So thank you very much, and good luck, Delia. I hopefully answered your question. I'm not sure what RIP means, but folks, thanks so much, and have a great evening, and good luck on the exam, Delia. Yes, you're welcome. All right, and this is Mr. Ippolito. I'm going to do a quick one more last shout out to thank you to my daughter Libby for helping out to sort the questions and to answer questions. And have a great evening. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Take care. Bye bye.